Warning, spoilers are ahead for the game being discussed. If you have not played this game, continue under your own advisement. When Spider-Man came out in 2018, I did not rush to play the game. Honestly, I only recently played it in 2023 this year, and I played it only a few months ago, so I am fresh off knowing the entire Spider-Man lore, everything that happened, all DLCs, every character involved. And my initial thoughts, just to give a very, very brief review of that so you can know what I think going into Spider-Man 2. I enjoyed Spider-Man 1, though when you're playing it back to back with all of the DLCs, having to play it multiple times over and over, that along with Miles Morales, it did become repetitive. If I was just playing it with the DLC spaced out between, my enjoyment wouldn't probably have been as exhausted, but I still enjoyed it and I thought it was a solid 8 out of 10. So I enjoyed Spider-Man 1 from 2018 immensely. Now with that being said, let's go into Spider-Man 2, which is what this review is all about. The very first thing that I want to talk about in this review is the story. This story is a very up and down affair when it comes to telling a narrative. Sometimes when you're playing as Peter, there's politics drip fed to you here and there, but they are few and far between. I can honestly count only maybe 3 times that there may be politics involved with Peter. One of them with Peter is when you're doing a side quest for someone, and this side quest serves no purpose other than introducing you to what is presumed to be a Muslim character. The side quest consists of you going to see her, some random flashback out of nowhere plays for whatever reason. You fight some guys, then you arrive at your destination, and then this person takes a picture of you. Obviously, she takes a picture of Spider-Man, but she wants to meet Peter Parker because he's the one that took a picture of Spider-Man or whatever, and things like that is what separates the flow of this game from just being great. But that is one, and the only other one that I can really think of. Very early on in the game, Spider-Man Peter mentions that New York City should not have guns in it. Clearly they're anti-gun in that they don't want bad guys to have guns. That is a clear and obvious thing that you should not need to put in the game, just to tell the world, hey, we're anti-guns, but whatever. And it's not really Peter's story, but you do play as Mary Jane Watson again in this 3 separate times, maybe 2. The difference this time is at least the gameplay is a little bit improved. Even towards the end of the game, you go straight on third-person shooter. I mean, obviously you're not using a gun. Technically you are, but you get what I'm saying. Those are the 3 instances to where I felt like there was some narrative being preached. The very first game, fans hated playing as Mary Jane Watson. They hated it, and people didn't want it to return. But this game, going in the direction that it was in, with clear, obvious, not even subtle politics, but clear and obvious, they decided, no, we're going to have a female character playable in our game. Spider-Man 1 and 2 with Mary Jane Watson and Haley. That is what this game should be called. But I had no complaints about the Spider-Man side of the story. There were a few trickled in political things, but nothing major. When you switch over to the Miles side of the story, you are going to have politics force fed to you all throughout it. One of the very early instances is that when you're playing as Miles, you go to his school to do stupid things. Honestly, these side quests were probably some of the most useless ones you can put in the game, in a Spider-Man game. You go and there's this gay guy who wants you to help ask his boyfriend to prom. The point I'm making with this though is that I feel like they had 2 different teams writing the narratives. I feel like one team was tasked with writing the Miles Morales side of the story, and the other team was tasked with writing the Peter Parker side of the story. And while the Peter side does have politics in it, they are what you would typically expect to see. the Miles side, if you thought that the dude asking his boyfriend to prom was the most political thing, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Because eventually later on, I don't remember exactly if it's before or after, but you have to play a mission with Black Cat where Peter tells you to go find Black Cat because maybe she'll listen to you, because she won't listen to Peter because she knows Peter. And the whole point of this mission isn't to introduce Black Cat as a character within the game. The whole point of this mission is to let you know that Black Cat is now bi and she has a girlfriend. Honestly, when I played this, I was hoping that I did not see Black Cat one more time throughout this game, so I would have more fuel to add to the fire that this is just one political rally for an Insomniac. They don't introduce Black Cat for any story narrative. No. They introduce Black Cat that she stole something that can literally, I guess it's like a teleporter. You think of an environment, there's a portal that opens and you can go to it. She literally steals this thing, this device, just so she can go see her girlfriend in Paris, who may or may not be in danger. The whole point of this mission is to tell the world, hey, look, we included the gay guy, now we got the bi girl. Are you sensing a pattern with Miles's side of the story? His entire identity is centered around politics. And later on with Miles, there's a few more side missions. He does something with music. I forgot exactly what it was. Honestly, it's not memorable at all. You just remember the politics that was fed to you. And the word BIPOC is mentioned. In case you're unaware, like some people I know who had no idea even what this was, is Black, Indigenous, people of color, which is essentially saying not white. So they pretty much have this whole quest line. It's like, this quest isn't for you, white person. This quest is for everyone who isn't white. That's like 3 things for Miles politically that is his whole identity. His entire identity is centered around that. Along with that, I'm going to include the Haley side of this, since Peter has his counterpart in Mary Jane and Miles has his counterpart in Haley. You play as Haley. You don't have any action sequences. You don't have any stealth sequences with Haley. No. What do? You literally grab a can of spray paint, go around spray painting these images on the walls, covering some graffiti that someone tried to paint, and you're like, these are bad, and you're following them. Haley later on tells this person that she can actually spray paint stuff and she's not bad, but you're covering up what she's doing, so it's kind of counterintuitive to you inviting her to your drawing, painting club, whatever it is. You literally play as Haley just to go around spray painting walls, and all you do is shake your controller, it changes the color of the paint, and then I'm pretty sure you just hit R2 to paint. You don't actually move anything. Maybe you do, I don't know, but a lot of these things just aren't memorable. And if you thought that was the only politics, no, this is going to be huge. Spoilers, I already gave you the warning at the beginning, but here it is again. Towards the end of the game, another character is introduced. You better believe we're not introducing white characters. No, this is Silk, who I didn't even know who it was at the time. I only learned. I'm not a huge fan of Marvel, DC comic. Like, I watch them if I can, but I'm not like some huge avid reader, so I didn't know who it was. But supposedly it's Silk, and it's essentially the Spider Girl woman. So they introduced her, and Peter at the end is talking about him wanting to retire, and I feel like that was just them gauging the response of, hey, how would you guys feel if we remove Peter and we just allow these 2 people to become the Spider persons? So as you can tell, we're this far into the review, and those are the politics in the game. When I tell you that this isn't a game to where there's a mention of politics here and there, no, this game is very in your face, and that's the thing. That's why I genuinely believe that 2 teams were writing this game. One team was like, hey, we're playing as Peter Parker. We can throw some politics in there, you know, anti-gun, have some diversity in there, have a Muslim, presumably Muslim character in there, whatever, you know, let's do that. Whereas Miles's identity is solely based around politics. This isn't a Spider-Man game for him. This is a political narrative rally for left-leaning people. There's an opinion piece published commending this game for being a rally for essentially left-leaning politics. So anyone who tries to argue that this game isn't that, the people themselves who this game was made for can clearly see it and are clearly welcoming it. But with the politics not being taken into account, there are still many up and down things in this game. From playing with Haley to there's one cutscene with Miles Morales and Haley. He has to rescue her towards the end of the game. Literally one enemy is attacking her. He rescues her while Peter is over here fighting his way to Venom's nest, presumably where something is located that they need to stop Venom. Miles goes to save Haley, tells Peter to wait. The world is literally on the brink of collapse. And what does Miles Morales do? These genius writers decided that we are going to throw a cutscene in there where Miles Morales asks Haley out on a date. Bullets are flying, death is on the brink, the world is collapsing, and we have a teenager who's worried about going on a date right now. You see what I'm saying? One side has Peter rushing to try to save the world, and then one writing has some teenage novel fantasy being fulfilled. The disparity in the writing it's absurd. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is the very end of the game, the final cutscene. In the final scene, we see Norman Osborn going to find Dr. Octavius and hopefully help him take down the Spiderman. And it's funny because he's like, you do know who the Spidermen are, right? Like maybe he does know who Miles Morales is, but he doesn't know that Miles is actually Spider-Man. So they're kind of not even acknowledging their own writing in that. But that's not even the bad part. The bad part is that the game, all of a sudden, Dr. Octavius' entire goal in the first game was to take down Norman Osborn. He knew who Peter was and gave him ample chances to live, and even in the end didn't want to necessarily fight Spider-Man. If he was like, if you allow me to do this, we're not going to fight. Why would Norman Osborn think that Dr. Octavius would randomly start helping him now? As I said, the story is very up and down. Sometimes there are great parts of the story, sometimes there are writing that will make you roll your eyes, and some of the times you can't wait until you play the next mission to see what happens. This game could have been good, and it's not even the politics. The politics don't weigh this story down. It's the random, you're in an action sequence, you're fighting the world, the Haley sequence where you're spray painting walls and stuff for whatever reason, the Miles part where you ask her on a date after you just got through fighting enemies. Things like this is what really ruined the narrative and how it comes together as a whole. I really just want to quickly talk about the open world activities. This game, like the previous one, had a decent amount of open world activities. There weren't a lot, but you do see Mysterio in this. He has things called Mysteriums to where they're like combat arenas in a way, and those are definitely funner than the screwball challenges in the previous game. There's memory fragments that relates to Sandman. If you've played the game at all, you would know that Sandman is really introduced at the very beginning of the game, and that's pretty much it. You don't see him ever again, but you do get the fragments. You can do a storyline with him with those fragments, but it's literally nothing to do with him himself. There's hunter bases that are similar to what the previous combat bases were in the first game, but these are a lot easier, I would say. With the traversal mechanics, you can now have a tightrope web, I guess we're going to call it, where you can pretty much shoot your webs anywhere and walk across it, which makes the stealth combat in this game absolutely easy. There's also these little spider bots that you can pick up, which deals with another side story, but again, this one is left open to interpretation. Maybe someone with comic book expertise knows, but I don't. I can't tell you. Overall, I would say that the open world activities in this one are a lot more calming and relaxing than the previous game. They definitely went more for just like a chill and relax vibe versus a screwball, get your headache ready vibe, which I commend them for that, and I liked it. I like the open world challenges, the open world collectibles in this game. Now we're going to talk about the gameplay. If you played Spider-Man 1, I would say that the gameplay in this honestly feels a little bit better when it comes to the combat. The abilities that you get seem a lot more potent in the sense of how they look, not necessarily of how they feel, because I honestly feel like your abilities do a lot less damage. But visually, they honestly feel more rewarding. Fighting wise, they feel more rewarding. And as you know, if you've seen any of the trailers, you know that you do play as symbiote Spider-Man. So you can imagine the abilities that you're going to be able to get that Venom essentially has. And honestly, there were times where I thought that playing as the symbiote Spider-Man with his abilities felt more better than just playing with Spider-Man's normal abilities that you have from the previous game. Honestly, it's just a matter of what your playstyle is. Do you want to feel like more of a badass? Then you probably want to play a symbiote Spider-Man. If you want to play more like Peter Parker, you'll go with the second option. One of the things about this being next gen was also the traversal within the gameplay. Honestly, there were a few times to where I wanted to fast travel, but for the most part, I was just enjoying the world, just flying around, wingsuiting, because wingsuit is introduced in this game, and honestly that feels better than you swinging around New York City, which is funny because that is like peak Spider-Man. What is he known for? Swinging through New York, solving crime. Well, how about the new and improved wingsuiting through New York and solving crime? But what makes it feel truly next gen is the absolute fast loading times. You can pick anywhere on the map that you want to fast travel to. Is like a mini cutscene of like 1 or 2 seconds, but it still looks like it's a seamless part of the gameplay before you can actually take control of the character. But there is practically no loading screens whatsoever at all. And I feel like this game, gameplay wise, loading times, everything that is associated with the game, this is the pinnacle of what a PS5 game could do today. Now, there's been plenty of games that has had fast loading times, but this is the first game where I know that it has had this fast of loading time, and you're able to pick anywhere you want to go on the map. That to me is just mind-blowing with how big the world is. But that's the power of current generation consoles, and this is exactly why it wasn't on last gen. My final thoughts on this game are that it is a good game, a great game even, that held itself down by inconsistent good writing. Sometimes the writing felt like you were in a straight action sequence and you forgot you were even playing a Spider-Man game. You felt like you were right there in the action, third-person cameraman following Spider-Man around. It can be genuinely fun. Then other times the story, when you're waiting for action, can be held down by Mary Jane Watson stealthing through sections that are forced, or you're playing as Haley and you just want to swing around the city. The inclusion of these, they're forced diversity. The politics that this game wanted to have in it is what holds it down, in my opinion, from being a great game. Clearly, if they took out the parts with Haley, they took out the Mary Jane part, the narrative would have come together so much more smoothly. But instead, it just feels like after this commercial break, we'll return to Spider-Man 1 or 2, Miles or Peter, whichever one you pick. Also, as I mentioned, the boss fights in this feels repetitive. The boss fights needed to be fewer and far between. Once the story with Kraven wraps up at around the 60% mark, I feel like the game takes a definite downturn. I felt like the story with Kraven was way better than the story of Venom. Venom is your cliche, hey, I'm an alien, I'm coming to overtake the human race and their bodies. Whereas Kraven, he had purpose for what he was doing. Yes, it's kind of goofy that he's like, hey, I'm dying of cancer, I'm trying to find my equal of who's worthy enough to kill me. But in my opinion, they did that so well. The next 40% of the game literally felt like you were fighting one villain. And you pretty much were. You were fighting Venom. I enjoyed my time with it. It's not a 9 in my opinion. It's not even an 8 in my opinion. It's definitely a 7.5. It definitely leaves a lot to be desired. If you take out the politics in this game, that's not going to take away from the fact that the story still is just cut up too much. I don't need to play as Haley. If you're a fan of Spider-Man though, you'll definitely enjoy this game. That's what matters at the end of the day. Maybe you won't be bothered by the interruptions in the story as much as me, but you will have enjoyment in it. It is a good game, and it's definitely one of the better games of the year probably. So I think you should probably buy it, but I genuinely just wish they would have included politics less. I don't care if you have some politics in your game. I mean, look at Hogwarts Legacy. There's a trans character in that game, but that actually feels like that person belongs in the world. It doesn't feel like they're just a token character to check off some political box. The politics in this game feels like everything is forced. Nothing feels natural. And I hate that. And because of that, I can't give it an 8. If it had no politics, it would definitely be an 8. But with the politics in it, with the slowed down sequencing, it's a 7.5. 110%, I believe a 7.5 is a good rating for this game. It's fun. But the narrative needed better work.